Hey everybody, KC here. So a couple of interesting stories have popped up on my radar about retailers that are trying to figure out going forward, how are they going to transform themselves? How they're going to make themselves relevant in the 18 months following the pandemic. Now, one of them is Warby Parker, which is eyeing an IPO where they're valued at $3 billion. Basically they're looking at growing their store count as being one of the ways to justify their existence, justify that price, and continuing to grow. Any growth they think they're going to get is probably going to come from stores, not from online businesses, which is where they started. Now, they're planning to open like 36 new locations this year alone. Of course, that depends on, I suppose, how the economy goes, which will give them about 160 stores total. And the thing is, they have a lot of competition, both online and in terms of brick and mortar. And one of the things they've got to figure out how to do is how do they keep their cool factor, right? Because Warby Parker is kind of cool. And at the same time, kind of grow their customer base and not just continue to sell to the same people they've been selling to. And that's really, really hard to do both. And I have to say, I'm a big Warby Parker fan. These are Warby Parkers. I have a couple of pair of Warby Parkers, and I would go back to them in a second. But they have a real challenge in front of them, and it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that. The other company that was referred to, this was in a New York Times piece, was Sweetgreen. Now, Sweetgreen has 129 restaurants around the country, but they were pegging a lot of their growth to people in offices eating salads at their desks. And to serve those people, they had created like 1,000 outposts. And these were outposts that were going to be in office and office parks and things like that, where they would deliver a mass number of salads that you would order earlier in the day, and they'd be there for lunch. And that's where a lot of their growth was coming from. That's a tough way to go right now when a lot of offices are still closed. Now, offices are talking about opening, but as we see more and more kind of variants pop up, and there's a little bit more uncertainty right now about the pandemic than there was even just a few weeks ago, it's hard to know how that's going to develop. Right now, Sweetgreen has about 250 of those 1,000 outposts up and running. The other thing they're doing is they're looking at how do they open locations that are not in cities and not near offices. So they're going into the suburbs. They're going to places they haven't been in before, hoping that there's going to be a lot of growth that they can get from there from people who aren't going back to the office, but still would like the Sweetgreen experience. On the other hand, it's really kind of interesting. They're moving away from cities, moving away from offices. But the New York Times also had a piece the other day talking about how, you know something, cities aren't dead yet. Even though there's this kind of anti-urbanism that captured a lot of people's imagination during the pandemic, everybody thinking people were going to move to the suburbs, move to the country, they're going to have yards, and all work was going to be remote. That's clearly not playing out that way. Listen, I live in the suburbs. It's nice to have a yard, but there's a lot of value to cities. There's a vitality about cities. They have culture, they have restaurants, and they have people. They have lots of people, and there's a lot of energy that comes from that. And I don't think we should ever discount the importance of cities in this country. Even when cities go through a hard time, they seem to come back. On the other hand, the way retailers, and whether it's Warby Parker or Sweetgreen or whoever it happens to be, the way they're looking at the market, they have to be a little worried that what we're seeing now in terms of a resurgence of the COVID-19 variants that are coming out, new mask mandates in places like Los Angeles County, that's got to worry them a little bit because the ground isn't really stable at the moment. We're not sure where things are going to go. And we just don't know what's next. And by the way, I have something I want to say about that. It's really interesting. I keep reading commentators who are saying, oh my God, we can't do mask mandates again. We had them before, we got rid of them. We can't do another mask mandate. Like that's the worst possible thing that could happen. Well, first of all, it's not the worst possible thing that could happen. Over 600,000 people have died in the United States because of COVID-19. So, mask mandates on the scale, it doesn't really bother me that much. But the other thing is, here's the deal. If you had a road and the road had an enormous pothole in it, you would think nothing about going to either end of the road, blocking it off until the pothole could be fixed. You'd just say, hey, no, you can't drive on that street now because there's a pothole. Saying to people, hey, we've got a resurgence, we're going to reinstate a mask mandate for a period of time just to make sure it doesn't get out of control. That's like blocking off a street that's got a really bad pothole. We have to stop thinking about these things in the worst possible way and think about it a bit. No, we're going to do the right thing to keep people healthy, because if you keep people healthy, you're going to keep the economy stronger, you're going to keep the culture stronger, and you're going to keep people stronger. That's the way to look at this thing, as opposed to people walking around with their hair on fire. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.